do people hire out for mixing and mastering a lot? Is that, or like you kind of said, like a lot of people do everything in one house? Like,
yeah,
what is that?
I mean, for me, and I know a lot of other guys in the metal scene that are producing, mixing, and mastering as well. Like, it's a lot of the time the artists, wherever they are in the world, they'll track at home or they'll go to a studio, get their tones, and then they'll send out the multi-tracks to be mixed and mastered, or just mixed and then sent off to a specialized mastering engineer. I mean, it's really all over the place, but I'm just trying to express that it's very common in metal, like, for the mixer to also master, and there's really the
lines are blurred
to no detriment, really. Like, it's a lot of these guys are doing great work, and I wouldn't say it would be better if the mixer just mixed and sent it out to someone else to master, because often what we're doing in the mixing phase is we're mixing but with mastering in mind. So once we, like, for example, if you were to take all of your master processing off of, say you have a final mix, it's a metal mix, it's like, it sounds great, the artist loves it, it sounds great on streaming. If you were to take the mastering chain off and listen to how that mix, it would be all over the place balance wise, because we're compensating in the mix to get the master to where we want it, so that once it's at that certain LUFS level, once it's at whatever sounds good, -10, -9, whatever, it's the kick and the snare is punching where we want it. It's hitting where we want it. Everything is hitting where we want it. But if we were to take all those plugins off or hardware off, the mix would be not how we would balance it if we were just mixing it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. It's like the mix bus. When you're mixing into the mix bus, it affects everything, every move you do, right? Like,
yep.
People that do like top-down mixing, right? That start with the stereo bus compression or whatever, and maybe like, EQ. They're mixing into that. So when you take it off, everything falls apart. There are some people that mix the other way around from the ground up.
Right.
And then
not necessarily the mix falls apart. It just needs to be rebalanced a little bit. Especially the drums and guitars. Like, things just need to be, basically the drums need to be tamed a little bit, because the transits be like really poking out when you take the mastering processing off of the mix. So, like, I remember your guest last week, he was talking about how he does the opposite. Like, he's more about he doesn't put anything on.
Josh Bonanno.
He's more like a purist of like traditional mixing, which is great too. I mean, I think it's also very genre dependent. Like, I wouldn't do that if I was mixing a pop song or mixing, something else. Like, that's like a very specific, like, to metal technique, I would say.
Yeah. No, I get it, because you're trying to push things loud, and like, how the kick and the snare and the bass are hitting that stereo bus thing,
right? Because
and then
often,
you adjust,
often
the whole chain.
What happens is, say you send it out to, it's a heavy rock metal mix, and you send it out to Chris Loraugi, and he mixes it. It sounds awesome, and then you send it out to be mastered by, say, Ted Jensen, and who is amazing, and it gets to. He does his thing, or whoever's mastering it, they do their thing, and it's not like to the loudness level that the client may want. So, to the detriment of the way the transients are sitting, to the way the drums are punching, if the mastering engineer makes it louder, like to please the artist, what happens is a lot of those snares will go away. You know what I mean? A lot of the kicks and snares would kind of get squashed in a little bit, and it won't be as punchy. So
it's so crazy. That's so crazy. And it's so crazy that like the pursuit of loudness makes mastering inside the mix better than sending out to a dedicated mastering engineer for some genres.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not always the case, but that is just what I've realized. Sometimes you have to do things a little bit more extreme, because it's an extreme sound. It's an extreme genre. Like, a lot of these artists, they expect it to be a certain loudness, and if it's not as loud as whatever they're listening to right now, then they think there's a problem or something is wrong, and unfortunately, that's just how it is. Like, obviously, that's not the case, but that's just the reality,
Yeah, I just had that just gave me that revelation of like maybe the Death Magnetic record that Andrew Sheps famously mixed really, really loud and got mastered to death, no pun intended, might have been better off if like it had been mixed and mastered at the same time.
I don't know. I mean, possibly. It just depends on, that's the thing. It depends on who's working on it. And, how they're feeling that day, like how there's so much that goes into it, honestly. But I don't really think with metal, there's no right or wrong. It's like however the final mix sounds, if the artist loves it and the people love it, it does not matter how it was, how it was mixed, or if the mixer mastered it as well. Like, it doesn't matter. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like it's like, I love how you said it's just extreme. It's an extreme genre, and people looking for extreme methods maybe to get those. And I think metal fans are hardcore about their fanhood. So it's even if it's not the biggest audience, they're a very dedicated audience. So yeah, it's super cool. Yeah. So if I don't mind, if it's okay, if I backtrack to Sound City, I'm just super enamored by the fact that you're working there. Like, I mean, obviously I saw the Dave Grohl documentary. I'm assuming it's the same place, right?
Yeah, like it's called the Sound City complex. And when you drive in, there's like the main courtyard, the main area where the main Sound City Studios was, which is now rented out by, I'm not sure I think it's a record label, but they do a bunch of high profile bands now, but I think the last artist I knew that was in there was they're doing like Killer's live record in there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the main building, and then across from that there are other studios. Like, it's all different studios, and some are project studios, some are full blown studios. Across from the main Sound City building is my friend Matt Wallace. He has his studio there. Next to him is another friend of mine. His name's Shelby. They have their production company is called The Fund. But so there's studios all in the complex. Across from me is No Town Sound. Next to me is Boom Bap Recording Studios, which is like hip hop and rap. And then I'm like in the corner doing my, extreme metal stuff. Like, I'm the outlier here. But yeah, man, it's
the black sheep of the
It's a great it's a great community, because we all kind of talk, and we'll go out to lunch here and there, and it's awesome because it's so inspiring, not only because of the history of Sound City, but like every day when I come to work, I'm just like, holy shit, like I can't believe I'm here. Like, and some days I'll kind of I'll be distracted by whatever I'm working on, and I kind of I'll forget about it. But yeah, like every once in a while, I'll just be like, wow, I'm really grateful to be here just because of the history, and as you can,
yeah, that's awesome, dude. And is your actual studio in like part of the actual same building that legendary Sound City was in, or is it like it's in like across the hall?
It's across the parking lot, because like it's a complex. So like the first when you drive in, there's like this whole 2-story building of studios, and Sound City, it's its own separate building, but it's basically like just right across the parking lot.
That's great. Yeah. I love that. I love that it came back and that it became a whole community. It's bigger than it was. In a sense, it's bigger than it was because now there's so many studios there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So bringing it back to kind of like mixing and metal and all that stuff. So I know, like, I've interviewed metal guys that do crazy drum recording techniques, crazy guitar recording techniques. Do you do anything that's like maybe extreme, so to speak, in terms of like your capture? Maybe, I don't know, maybe you like to talk about guitars, because I know you're a guitarist.
Yeah. Well, personally, when I do a production, if I'm tracking and responsible for capturing the characteristic and tone of the artist, I like to, for metal guitars, like really heavy saturated guitars, like it's nothing too crazy. It's just like I still like to use actual amps and cabs. I like to mic up a nice cab and get a nice tubed amp, like really cranked and saturated, and then I'll mic that up just straight on the cone with the 57. And what I like to do, especially if it's for like a bit slower, like doom metal stuff, or like it's really drawn out, open chords, lots of ringing out and sustaining, I'll just put like a random condenser like in the corner, like facing the corner, just to get a room sound, to get like that wishy-washy, like nasty, like ambience of the guitar in the room. So I like to do that and blend that underneath the 57 of the cab. And that's something I do pretty often. If it's like a really, really fast metal where it's all about the pick attack and the transients and the intricacies, then I won't even bother throwing up a room mic. I just get straight to
just one amp, one mic.
One amp and one mic. I don't even do two, honestly, because most of the time I just end up putting, if I use like another condenser on the cab or a 421 or whatever, I'll be like, yeah, I'll do it just to be safe in case I need it. But I don't use it. I just, if I do, it's like super tucked underneath where the FM 57 is. And it's like, so a lot of the time, if it's really fast metal, I'll just one mic it.
Is it like a phase thing, or is it, it's just the right mic?
Yeah. For, like I said, for like really fast, intricate metal, if it's like technical, like the room tone is just irrelevant. It's like it's just about that nice tone and the fast attack of the string and getting that nice crunch. So yeah, I just don't even, if I know it's like the song is like pure fast, like pick attack stuff, I won't even use a room mic.
Yeah. And you're not into the amp sims on the computer, like the neural DSPs and all that stuff.
I have some of the neural DSP stuff, which I really like. I'll use it for if I'm doing like just songwriting or I need to like throw something up really quick and get a tone fast. Then I'll use. I really like the Gojira one. I just got that, and I really love that one. It sounds great, and I actually really like the Dark Glass bass plugin. That is fantastic. So I'll use those. I really like those, but I'm still kind of a purist. Like I still really like just miking up a really nice head and cab, and just, it's still like, it's close. It's really close, but to me, it's like, it's not really there yet. That's just my opinion. Yeah. I'm not really into the Kemper stuff. I understand why people like it for live and for in the studio, but yeah, if like I'm doing a record that is really important and matters, like obviously it's like if it's a serious project, I'll just like to take the time and mic it up and get the tones and just spend that time up front.
Yeah. In terms of like drums, and I know you're kind of working the hybrid approach in terms of when you're tracking drums. How involved do you get in the actual engineering of drumming, or is it you kind of leave it to the engineer that you trust?
When I go, I use another studio in Burbank, California called ES Audio. Shout out to ES Audio and Donnie Baker. He's the manager over there. But I've been going there for years, and I'm very, very like, I engineer the session with like, I'm very like, I want to be hands-on with every part of it if I'm producing it. So we'll go in there and we'll get the tones dialed in. I'll have Donnie help me, like he'll patch everything up, and I'll decide, okay, do we want to compress the rooms heavily? Do we want to compress, just all those decisions. And yeah, I'll sit there, and I like to be hands-on with the artist while we're tracking drums, and I'll sit there and engineer on Pro Tools and whatnot. So I'm very hands-on. Like there's only been a few situations where I haven't engineered my own productions.
Do you defer like editing to somebody else? You do everything.
Sometimes, if the issue I've been running into lately is like, honestly, I know like most of us, we don't like, that's the work that obviously no one wants to do, like the drum editing, the instrument editing if it needs it.
For me, it's a bottleneck. It's like it just slows down me finishing songs.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if I have to do it, like honestly, like I end up having to do like 70% of it, because a lot of the time that my go-to guys who are great at editing and vocal tuning, they're so busy or they don't have time. So I'm like, damn, like either I wait 2 months or just do it myself. So I end up having to do it myself most of the time, but I've gotten pretty quick.
I know that.
Yeah. I've gotten pretty quick at, like, I have my system down for drum editing. I have my system down for tuning. So I just kind of like suck it up, and I'm like, all right, just the next 2 hours, just gotta just plow through it and do it. So yeah, I'll most of the time I'll have to do my own editing.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember I spoke to this one guy, Ed Boyer, who worked on a lot of Grammy-winning a cappella music, totally different genre. But he told me, he's like, I either am really excited to work on the music, or I'm really excited to get the music over, to get the work over with. Mm-hmm. so better to just kind of like,
Yeah.
crunch.
You're totally right though,
Yeah.
when you said it's like a bottleneck, because for me, the problem I have with when I know I have to edit, especially like if a lot of editing needs to be done, like it is kind of a buzzkill on the flow of the project, because a lot of the time the editing and tuning, especially if it's for like a 4-song EP or a full album, it takes longer than anything else. It takes longer than the recording. It takes longer than the mixing. It's like it consumes the most of the time with the project. Like if, at least for me, because if it's a heavy, if the song needs heavy drum editing, and tuning and, you know, bass and guitar editing even, that's like at least to really like do it